Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another Matt Talks Hospitality. This time, we're going to dig into loyalty. And in order to figure out what is loyalty, what did it used to be, and what is it going to be, I've invited the ultimate loyal member of Marriott, but also our president at Mews, who runs half the company, runs all of our go-to-market teams. Mike, do you want to maybe give a short introduction to who you are and some of the great companies that you've come from and the experience that you bring into hospitality?
Yeah, I mean, it's been now 13 months at Mews, which has really been a blast. And it's a perfect fit for things I enjoy, travel, things I've spent time in fintech, SaaS, and it's been a really interesting run here for over a year. Prior was at a blockchain company called Paxos, running GTM there, helping the most regulated companies on earth integrate things like crypto and blockchain payments and digital assets. Prior, chief commercial officer of Compass, which is the largest real estate company in the US. And before that, head of global sales at Square. So I've been spending a lot of time in and around fintech and in and around global businesses, which is where my need for loyalty and need for travel, kind of make a meeting here. But,
How many
this is a fun
days a
topic.
year? How many days a year do you travel?
Probably 50%. Like I think last year was 135 nights in Marriott hotels alone. So like there's more. There are other hotel. I didn't count the other ones, but it's probably about 50% of the year on average. Plus I split my time between Miami and New York. But those are homes. Those are not hotels.
So do you enjoy travel, or is it just a necessity?
No, I love it. I love it. If I didn't love it, this would be a terrible industry, be a terrible job. And when you love travel, like you have to also love the inefficiencies that pop up. I got diverted to Boston last week, and I was in a hotel room a few weeks ago that had a leak, of course, right on the bed. Travel never gets old to me. And there are some places I've been to 70, 80 times that still feel, somewhat new. And if it doesn't feel new or you can't make it feel new, I think travel gets old to people, but not for me.
And are there hotels that you are loyal to that are not part of the loyalty program that you're like the gold diamond member of, like independent hotels that you're very loyal to?
Couple, but only because they happen to be in places that don't have, kind of your standard branded, portfolio to choose from. One is upstate New York, which is kind of good at the holiday season. Go up there with a bunch of friends, go drink some wine and enjoy something very different from Manhattan. There's another property down in Florida that's kind of also in the middle of nowhere where you end up like, okay, you'll go back because it's a good experience. There's not really a commercial reason to necessarily go back. It's just that they treat you well, and it's a unique experience. So it's fun to be able to go back to the same spots. Some are good at remembering you, some are not.
So we conducted some research. We did some research with Talker Research, and they did research with 2,000 US travelers over 18 years old who are regularly traveling. And some of the findings are quite interesting. So they said 7 out of 10 travelers favor personalized experiences over traditional hotel rewards. The other thing that stood out for me was 82% of current hotel loyalty members cite frustrations with the traditional programs, like points that are expiring, blackout dates, difficulty to earn points, etc. Do you recognize yourself in some of those data points?
I think across the board, you have to. It's like, for me, loyalty on the personalized side, it's like you want the loyalty program not just to reward you financially, but to somehow make this experience better because there's a familiarity with you. And they have all your data, they have all your travel history. Like they should know you better than you know you. And AI eventually will probably help them know you better than you know yourself. On the points frustration, these programs have changed over the years. First of all, points are so much easier to earn than they've ever been. In the US, especially, you can earn points on almost every credit card, or you could transfer points from Chase, Amex, Citi, Capital One, Bilt, whoever, to a currency of your choice, an airline, a hotel, whatever. So points are easier, but hotels have also shifted from fixed rate redemptions, category X equals number of points, which meant you could get some incredible outsized value for those points. Now it's all pretty much variable rate. So they're not stupid. They've pegged the points conversion to the price of the room. So you're no longer getting some of that incredible value that you may have in the past, with some exceptions. Some have blackout dates, some restrict the number of rooms that are available, for points redemption. Some lack on all these crazy fees on top of the points redemption. Again, very hotel specific, but I think those two pain points are only those two things are very clear, in I think all loyalty programs today, at least like the points based loyalty programs.
But if those things are true, Marriott, I think they have 230 million loyalty members. They added like 7 million in Q1 of this year alone, like new loyalty members. So if those things are true, that frustration level or the lack of personalization, how are they so successful still today?
I think there's still like a utility of the points. You may not be getting $3,000 a night redemption for, 50,000 points that you did in 2016, 2017. But what you are getting now is like a pretty predictable use of those points. And we were at the IHC conference in New York not long ago, and one of brands actually had a quote recently in Skift that said more than 90% of points redemptions are for your $150 to $300 a night hotels. It's not for the aspirational stay. That number felt really high, 90%, but maybe for that brand, it's very real because of their portfolio. So to many people, the points still become a really good arbitrage of, instead of spending 200, I'm going to just burn some of these points. Maybe they don't travel very often. Maybe they're taking their kids to college, or they're going to a college football game, or they're going for a weekend away, in the countryside. That's where points still become, I think, really valuable. The other thing is, these points, the more you give them out, right, the more you have to give people reasons and places to spend them. So these chains have also offered, experiences. You can now convert those points to a wine tasting. You can go to a concert. You can book, game tickets, through those points. Terrible redemption values, but for some people, they don't care. They would rather burn the points and not spend $1,000. I'm the idiot with the actuarial table trying to figure out, like, well, this point is actually 0.45% lower than it should be. I'm the one.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, yeah. Like, there's always like an arbitrage. Is it better to pay cash, or is it better to redeem points? And points have like a generic value that you can calculate in many ways. So it's like, no, that's not worth the points. I would rather use the points for, I don't know, the St. Regis in Venice, or the Al Maha in Dubai, or, the whatever, the new Ritz-Carlton Nomad in Manhattan, versus using it for a Marriott, Courtyard that is $175.
Yeah. So often we see this quantitative data, these studies that we have conducted, for example, but it's very rare that you hear from an actual guest who stays in a hotel for half of their life. And I don't know anyone who stays in more hotels and who really embraced the loyalty program of a particular brand and sticks with. So I want you to represent all of these loyalty members around the world in this first bit. And then I want to dig deeper in what the future of loyalty is down the line. But I'd love to understand, what was the moment that this brand kind of locked you in, where you're like, yes, you got me? Like, what was the thing that happened in that journey?
It's kind of unfair because Marriott didn't get me, Starwood did. And Starwood, among travelers, especially business travelers, was regarded in the US as there's no better outsized reward system than Starwood points. And it was twofold, not just the way they rewarded points in the hotels, but their credit card. The Starwood Amex was the most valuable credit card scheme you could ever have signed onto. This was like consultant 101, investment banker 101. When you graduated college, first card you got was that Starwood Amex. Because again, the points redemptions were so valuable, and it was a very small chain. I think when Marriott bought them, there were 700 hotels, 800 hotels. Marriott had 7,000, right? So when you stayed at a Starwood property, you were recognized, you were treated differently. The pool was much smaller. So you did really feel that. So that's when it really started. In college, like, I didn't care. Funny enough, I was an airline loyalty starting at 16 years old. That never changed. So I've always been like addicted to the idea of like accrue points and redeem them for something. But that's how Marriott got me. Then when Marriott bought Starwood, obviously, again, Marriott's portfolio is the size of Starwood. And for a short time, you had these unbelievable redemption opportunities for the old Starwood points into the Marriott system. I could talk about that separately, but that hooked a lot of the Starwood people to stick with Marriott. And then Marriott did a pretty amazing status match program and, kind of a transition reward program of the best parts of the Starwood program, like their ambassador program, which now Marriott has. I have a love-hate relationship with Marriott because it's like you're kind of stuck. At the same time, like, if you can use the point system the right way, it is very rewarding. But it's less rewarding in like the individualized, personalized sense that I think some people really expect from a loyalty program.
And like you said, I'm kind of stuck. Like, I can imagine that you sometimes feel trapped, but would you ever consider leaving for something else? Is there something else that might be equally good, or if not better?
Yeah, like, I have top tier status with Marriott, Hilton, and I think I have like second top tier with Hyatt. My Hilton status comes from my credit card, and my Hyatt status comes from just some historicals, with them. It's the challenge with having Marriott lock me in, right, is that I have lifetime status. So I don't have to stay a single night, and I still get second tier. So I don't get the ambassador status that I have now. But that ambassador program is actually one of the most valuable things that would be very hard to leave, because it's actually a personalized individual, who I can pick up the phone, send an email, and either handle problems or help arrange things or make certain things special. That's the hard part that I would find really challenging to replace. But you can go earn points on any of these company programs and get kind of an equivalent loyalty. It's a little different from the airlines, where hotels, I do think, actually reward their top tier members better than airlines do. And we could talk about why and how and what matters. But each of the programs also is not equal. The way Hyatt treats its top tier, Hilton, Marriott, are all very, very different. IHG and Accor are even more different from those three, in terms of the biggest brands.
What are the differences that matter? And what are the things that drives you towards one of the brands or one of the programs when you book, when you've got the choice between all of the hotels in a city? What's the benefit that you're like, that's the one I'm going to book?
Yeah. So you've got like 5 kind of key, like loyalty benefits of these top tier statuses. Typically it's suite upgrades, check-in flexibility, check-in, check-out flexibility. You have certain like flexibility on the rate itself and discounts that come with the rate. For some top tier, you'll get free breakfast and lounge access. Sometimes there's also like, a special amenity or thing that the hotel will do, for those top people. For me, like this, I tremendously appreciate having a suite, right? I just like space. I don't like feeling like I'm cooped up, in a room, even if I'm there for 8 hours max a day. There's just something mental about waking up and not seeing 4 walls caving in on you. So that's the one I appreciate the most. And I think Marriott, for all their faults, it's actually part of the program that they do really, really well. The other thing is this benefit called U24. So for an American traveling to Europe, typically you arrive, 6, 7, 8 a.m. Check-in time standard is 3 p.m. Maybe they'll give you an early check-in, right, as an elite member. But if the hotel's full, you're not getting anywhere until 4 p.m. But you can actually lock in an early check-in time and an early check-out time. Basically, you can arrange the check-in, check-out times based on your own schedule. I find that to be, especially in London, insanely valuable.
That's amazing. And I did a podcast the other day with Bashar, who said loyalty is bribery. And it's like, if we were to take the points away, you have no loyalty to that brand. You wouldn't go back to the hotel. Was he right? Or yeah.
There are still certain hotels that give a good experience, right? So all else equal, right? Like we've talked about this, like there's a Marriott in Prague that treats me really, really well. I think they actually treat everyone really well. And they have like 90 suites. So like they're upgrading everyone, to suites. There are certain boutique hotels in the Marriott portfolio that are outstanding, right, in and of themselves. So there are always going to be good hotels, of course, in the portfolio. You would have to assume, the St. Regis in Venice, the St. Regis Putamita, the Ritz-Carlton Nomad, the Ritz-Carlton Tokyo are always going to be high desire hotels. But are you willing to spend 2,500 euros a night for that room in Venice versus burning 80,000 or 100,000 Marriott points? Like, yeah, that's a hard trade-off. So it is bribery, but it's also an incentive. It's not just like bribery is a reverse incentive in the sense, like, if you don't do this, right, like, I'm going to give you this. And, real bribery is like just is pure incentive based. So, I love, that there is a reason to go back. And by the way, you're also accruing points, to go for the next one. So, and you can use those points for yourself. You can use them for family, friends, and, it becomes a really valuable thing, to not give up on.
And do you think that the current loyalty programs drive the right behavior? So yes, they lock you in to book the hotel, but are you the right customer that spends a lot at the hotel as well? And is the loyalty program driving you to do that?
I think it depends. Like if you look at the percentage of rooms, for example, across Marriott Bonvoy that were booked by Bonvoy members, it's something like 65, 70% globally. So clearly it's doing something of just getting you into the room. Now, is that driving the right food and beverage consumption or the right activities consumption through that hotel? Very hotel specific. Most of the time, I don't think so. The majority, I think, of Bonvoy members globally are business travelers. They're typically not, going to spend a ton at the hotel outside of like their utilitarian breakfast or grabbing a quick burger before, you go to bed. But I think there's a lot more they could be doing to both know your preferences and desires. Like, are you the type of person who would spend inordinate amounts of money on food and beverage at the hotel? Or book spa or cabanas or other things at that hotel. I don't think these programs touch, any of that. I think it's a big gap actually in how they look at their customers.
Because do you ever get really personalized experiences based on what they know? You must have the richest like profile of data that they have access to in a central reservation system. But do you ever feel that they actually read it and did something with it to create something unique for you?
Some have for sure, which always makes me question how much they actually do have on me, or if it's just all thrown away after every reservation. The Edition Hotel in Miami, which is where I would stay constantly before I moved to Miami, they knew me inside and out. I mean, one year I spent almost 50 nights there. The Sheraton in Tribeca in New York, when I lived in San Francisco, but before I moved back to New York, that hotel knew me inside and out. Everything about the food I would order, the wine I liked, the room I preferred, like the exact room that they would have ready for me. It was like really unique. And that mattered because, to be honest, that's not the nicest hotel in Manhattan, not even close. It was several blocks, though, from the old office, and they did treat me in a very, very kind of special way. When I went back to the St. Regis in Venice last year, I stayed a few times, but when I was there, they were the same woman at the desk, Valentina, remembered me from 2 years prior. And again, but that's more of a personal
And it's
remembrance. I don't
local,
think there's
right?
anything. What's that?
Yeah, it's the local database. But like you'd think that they'd have a massive database of information that they use AI to kind of tell the hotels that you're about to go to that you've never been to before to create something special. But every example you have is like because you came there regularly, they knew you.
Yeah, but if you would think they have this massive database, right? In AI,
I would think.
I think it takes 25 minutes of typing before they can get your room key ready. So it tells me whatever that system is will remain unnamed. I have a feeling it's not. We know it's not Mews, but I have a feeling it's not something that's AI enabled in any way.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
No, no, unless by clicking on a keyboard you trigger AI.
If you got to redesign the current loyalty program of the brand that you're loyal to, what would you change?
So, like back when I was at Square, we had a loyalty product, and one of the most common uses of loyalty was this like punch card mentality. Buy 10 get one free. That's not loyalty. That's just an automatic discount. And an automatic discount is not loyalty. And I think many of the points programs today are just that. They're just automatic discounts for future stays. I think you can do one of three things. One is like the surprise and delight type concept, which is randomly, unpredictably, not all the time, because then you just create an expectation, right? That just you change the bar. You have to do something that tells the guest that we know you really well in a non-creepy, non-like privacy invading way, but just in a way that's like, hey, this is really special, right? And we know who you are, but only because of like our relationship as guests, right? That like they would do something special. I really think you can use data, you can use patterns to do that easily today. AI makes that like super easy. The second thing is you have to use those points in a way that creates like massive redemption value in a way that would trigger you to use the points in a way you never normally would. And again, it's like a special, it's another form of discounting. But if you said, hey, and by the way, you look at their data, like Starbucks was actually incredible at this with their app. If you went into Starbucks every day and ordered a latte, they're not going to offer you a discount for lattes. They're going to offer you a discount for a sandwich, which you've never ordered, to see, can we drive different behavior? So they look at your patterns, the hotel, can they drive different behavior to travel personally instead of professionally? Can they incentivize you to go to Asia, whereas you normally always go to Europe? Those are types of things that I think could be super interesting for loyalty to truly do. And again, I think with the AI where it is today, these are things that every company should be doing. But first, you need a CRM, right? You need good data. You need all the data in an organized, centralized place, because Marriott, I think, has 38 brands or something, 9,400 hotels owned by 9,000 probably different franchise owners. So it's very, very hard unless you could do it the right way from the ground up.
Because I imagine that those big giant hotel chains, they're sitting on all kinds of legacy data servers that just cannot compete with something brand new that's coming into market. So if you were a smaller hotel chain that could design this from the ground up, you could possibly design something that is infinitely better than what you get, because it can genuinely look at the data and then do something with it. From what size hotel group do you think a loyalty program makes sense? Because we serve a lot of what we call mid-markets, but they could be groups from 10 to 200 hotels. At what point should they have the traditional points program or a loyalty program?
I think that those are three different things, right? I think a traditional points program is when you have like true scale, I don't know what the number would be. You probably need thousands and thousands of unique guests over some historical period to have patterns based on it. But the second thing is you can still build a loyalty program that is very unique to your hotel and to your experience. And there's a paradox, which is like the most loyal customers are loyalists to the smallest businesses. And this is very common of like people have their local coffee shop, their local deli, their local dry cleaner, their local whatever. So it does show that there actually is loyalty at even the most like small unit. But most companies are really bad at knowing that. Funny enough, who's really good at this? Like in New York City, dry cleaners. The dry cleaners know everything you need cleaned, when, oh, you need this tomorrow, right? Oh, this one you don't need till next week. We'll deliver it for you. You know, all of this is like really unique. A hotel can do that at such a cooler level. You know, hey, we know you love your coffee in the morning. We'll deliver it to you. You know, there's a very famous hotel called the Fogo Island Inn, you know, the one like up in the middle of nowhere, perched onto like a cliff in the middle of nowhere, on an island in the middle of nowhere, you know, off the coast of Newfoundland. And the stories, it's one hotel, you know, and it's not cheap. But the things that they're known to do for their like repeat guests are, you know, pretty incredible. Like they weave a blanket, you know, with your face on it. You know, they'll put your name embroidered on the pillowcases, you know, little things that normally are reserved for the biggest chains, they do, so that if there is a chance of you coming back, you're going to come back. And it's definitely memorable. And they have one of the biggest social media presences for a single hotel in the world, because they get people to become evangelists of the company. And I think that's another place that you can like trigger loyalty, you know, is by turning your guests into advocates, turn them into evangelists eventually. And that can be done with one location, but you just need good data and you need to listen.
Is it a loyalty program, or is it just a hotel that has great hospitality and great service mindset?
I think if a hotel has great hospitality, great mindset, you're going to get repeat guests. There's no doubt. But then how do you get those repeat guests to do something different with you? Again, how do you get them to book a spa weekend? How do you get them to book a fancy dinner for their spouse or their family? How do you get them to think of this as a wedding destination or a hotel for a conference or a meeting? That's where, again, I think you take your repeat guests and you go from kind of a linear loyalty model to now, how do I really expand my relationship, you know, with that person? And then if a successful hotel wants to open a second hotel, those are your first customers, hopefully. And it's like, how do you then use that to build your next pool, you know, of customers? So good experience should be the best part of loyalty, or the best driver of loyalty.
I guess you could have run a great hotel that has really great service, but when you start to proactively think through what a guest journey could look like and start to give it structure. I met with Maison Mère in Paris the other day, and they had like 12 personas that they said, if you're a family with kids, then we lean into this kind of experience. And if you're a business traveler on your own, we create these experiences. And he's now opened multiple hotels so that he starts to structurally form a loyalty program, but it's not your traditional, it's really like kind of filtered down to the 12 personas. And it's first stab at it, but I loved the way that he was approaching it.
Yeah, segmentation is the first step. Who are your customers and what are the behaviors of those guests? And what do they want? They're all different, right? A friend of mine just went to Morocco with 2 little kids. And, you know, he travels with the nanny, he travels with the 3-year-old, the 1-year-old. And what you need at the Fairmont in Marrakesh is very, very different from what, you know, I would need, you know, at the Fairmont in Marrakesh. And, you know, they clearly took very good care of families at that hotel. So, and now it's known, if you're a family, this is a good destination, you know, for you. You know, being in the Medina when the streets are, you know, cobblestone and curved, probably not the best place to push a stroller, you know, through. Like hotels tend to be very good at knowing these things and knowing what those behaviors should be for a guest. How do you help that guest kind of go down that journey with you versus automatically looking for just the next cheapest room or the room that's going to offer, the hotel that's going to offer them the biggest room? That's how you decommoditize, you know, I think the experience.
So if you were a hotelier with a small group of hotels today, where would you start with this? Like, how do you begin building a loyalty framework for your hotel and the tech stack that you build on? Like often hoteliers struggle so much and they're like, right, we're just going to give a discount for next day. And then it's the discount program. That's a very different thing than something that drives loyalty. Where would you recommend that they start structuring this?
I think they have to listen to the guests, ask the guests questions. Like I think guests love to share. If you're willing to ask, right? Again, when do you normally wake up in the morning? Would you like a wake up call? It's not because anyone wants a wake up call anymore. It's because it helps the hotel learn your patterns, right? We have dinner. Well, are you interested in dinner tomorrow night? Should I get you a reservation? No, no, no. We're going to eat out. Okay, that's important. Can I help you with that experience? Can I help make some recommendations? Turning the front desk, especially into a concierge-like mindset, I think is at least how you start to collect the data, collect the insights. And then there has to be a way of storing those in a, again, in a like non-privacy violation way, but do it in a way that helps build patterns. Who are the types of people staying here? Hotels can collect this information, during the booking process. They can collect it pre-check-in. And actually, hotels that help guests check in before they physically check in, there are so many things that you can not only help save time on, but you can really build the best experience for that guest. Will you be traveling with a pet? Will you, have your kids with you? Anything we can, arrange in your mini bar or in the refrigerator. All those data points start to matter. And I would just literally dump them into an LLM at some point and say, who are my personas? Who are the customer types I have? And just start with something. Listen, store it, study it, and then build something, and have AI kind of build the recommendations of what those types of personas likely are going to want in that stay and then in the next one. The other part is stuff will go wrong. And how hotels address when things go wrong is sometimes, I think it's actually even more important than how they kind of do the positive things, because stuff inevitably goes wrong. And then that response to me is actually what shows a hotel that hey, this is special. You're not just a number. And I think that's also part of the experience, but that matters a lot, especially if you're ever going to go back.
Yeah, I agree. Like often the hotels where I've complained is because I cared. I was expecting so much from a hotel. I complained, but then the way that they rebounded from the way that they've complained, I'm incredibly loyal to some of those hotels where something went wrong and it really annoyed me, but then they just stepped up to the challenge. And then now I'm just a loyal fan of it. I really liked what you were saying about collecting data. I think this is one of the biggest challenges we have in hotels, where we have a conversation and then we move on to the next guest, but we forget to log it in the system. And like we now consume any piece of data through our AI, right? We've got these tooltips in our profiles. But the problem is a lot of hotels don't log the data in the system. And you've got to create a culture around collecting data. As you were talking, I was thinking, yes. So what you could do, because some of this will build in the very near future, but what you could do today is make sure that you capture the data. And then once every day, you have a report export that you run from your reservations report with all your profile notes and your reservation notes that you feed into an LLM, which you have educated about, how do you want it to action something? Like what are some of the surprises that you could build in? And you could set this all up today with an agent, with large language model, with the systems that, well, hopefully if you're on Mews, you could do this. But this is an easy way to start, like structuring a loyalty program, and then slowly you start to build from there.
Yeah, I think, Mews offers an unfair advantage, not for us to talk our own track here, but like there are so many things you could do with Mews to build loyalty that I think are so easy and lightweight, and also easy for the staff to be able to execute on. Not just easy for the owner or the manager to be able to build these profiles, but easy to then execute and to do it in a way that the guest doesn't feel like there's this transactional element. It really is about enhancing the stay, enhancing the follow-up. By the way, even just doing follow-up with a guest after they've left the hotel, that's the first touch point to be able to get them back for the next one. And by the way, people tend to be the most positive or the most negative right after a stay. So being able to get to them right away and either to like mollify the negativity or to enhance the positivity, is something that a hotel should be thinking of. And even the simple question of, is there anything we can do better? When you come back, right? Assume the sale, right? When you come back, what is something we can do better for you? That's like one of the most critical pieces of feedback that in the moment, most people are actually not even prepared to say, because most people hold back, the honest things, but like you probably wouldn't, but like most people would hold back. But a day later, people tend to be much more open to share open feedback than they would standing in front of someone at the checkout table.
I really like that. And what I would do now, so now you make me think. So what I would do is I would set up an automatic email that goes out with a nice short video from the GM saying, hey, we really value feedback. And it's like video content is so easy to produce with like a program like Loom, for example, that you then embed in an email that you automatically set up. It doesn't have to be triggered. I set up all these apps that trigger certain things to team members that join our company that automatically get a video from me saying, this is how we communicate internally. Hoteliers can use the same kind of Zapier kind of logic where you embed a video that's very personal from the general manager to every single guest that leaves, that gets the feedback from them that you then feed back into your system that you then use to recycle into driving loyalty from customers. So
definitely.
Nice. My last question, if there is no loyalty programs anymore, Marriott cancels all of their programs, how will your travel behavior change overnight?
Well, I have to figure out what to do with those 3.5 million points that are sitting there first.
We still there.
They're zero. Well, after I cry that there's about $100,000 in hotel value that I have not taken advantage of, I think there, like as I've traveled more and more, there are things that definitely matter less, right? Like, again, do I really need that suite? No, but I really do appreciate the space. Do I want their free breakfast? No, I really don't. I'm sorry. There's very little in a hotel breakfast that's going to truly like change my world. Some dry powdered eggs and, some stale toast. So it really does become what is a unique experience of staying at this hotel. So it's like, what would feel different? What would feel new? So that means like unique hotel styles, unique hotel locations, unique hotel experiences. There are hotels, like the Ice Hotel, in Jukkasjärvi. Like, do I really want to be freezing at night? No, but it's probably cool to experience that, just once. Do I want to stay in an igloo, in Finland? Maybe, right? Do I want to sleep underwater, maybe in the Maldives or in Dubai? Yeah. And those are never going to be chain hotels, right? Those are always going to be unique things. So that's probably where I would always kind of gravitate toward what's going to feel different, look different. If you look at the Les Orels in Versailles, right now, that is a chain, but it's not like a big branded chain, and they're an amazing Mews customer. If you stay at that hotel, they literally wake you up with like a lantern in the morning. They scratch on your door, like I guess they would in the 14th century, and they put a tray of coffee waiting for you in the morning. So again, they know how to get me. And those types of experiences, I think, really matter and would decommoditize the transactional element and make it really much more about what's going to look, feel, and sound unique to be able to be, really good memory.
I love that. So go back to really experiential travel and go back to the core of what travel is all about, is things you'll never forget.
I think so. People are paying to stay at your home. So that's how, an innkeeper, I guess, would view it a long time ago. And now, how do you recreate that same kind of level of hospitality so that people want to be there and want to come back?
Mike, thank you very much.
Got it. Fun.